Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I had some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie noob nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at ink today, shall we? Today's ink is by Diamine, under the dubious title of Golden Brown. Yep, sample form, obviously. Two pens I used were these. This is a JinHao X450, and I love my X450s because they tend to be pretty broad and pretty wet, and that's how I like my pens. And then to give a nice little contrast to that, I also use this Pilot 78G in broad, but both the broad and the double broad and 78Gs are actually stubs. So it's sort of a small stub, similar to the one you'll find on a Plumix now. Alrighty. Now, I wanted to find some comparable colors, so let's check those out. So here's Diamine Golden Brown. And then I thought I'd compare it to Noodler's Golden Brown, which you can see is actually more gold. It has little hints of green in it, and shades a lot. Here's KWZ Iron Gall Mandarin, which I think is probably closer to gold. A lot more shading, and water resistant, so there's that. Here's Private Reserve Sepia, which again I think is probably more gold, but also has little hints of green in it, and shades more. Here's Noodler's exclusive for Fountain Pen Hospital in New York City. This is Old Dutch Colony Sepia, which is darker and shades more and more gold. And here's Noodler's Kiowa Pecan, which is darker and more saturated and more gold, and also a little bit more actually brown. And, yeah. Can you tell I'm having problems with this ink? Am I being subtle? I rarely am. Anyways, I wanted to see what this ink could stand up against. So here's water, and water absolutely obliterated it. It just dyed the page when I was sopping it up. So, and then there's 1/3 bleach solution, which could you even tell it was there? No. Here's ammonia pen flush, which did start to break it up and get it moving, but it also started to do weird things to the paper itself. So I tried to sop it up quickly. Hydrogen peroxide got it moving, but didn't really remove much of it, which was kind of odd. Now, let's check out the chromatography, because it's kind of an interesting chromatography. Oh god, my camera's doing that thing with light blue that it does. Now, you can vaguely make out where that initial drop was put. You get this light, almost like pinkiness. And then you get sort of more of like an orangey brown. And this bright blue up the top, which is kind of surprising. And here's where I let it dry, which admittedly is not how you're supposed to do it. And there's really barely any change at all. I mean, maybe it's a little darker through here, but that's about it. Alright, paper test. Top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. Yeah, this is really thin. It's undersaturated. It's very watery, or at least my sample was. Yeah, it looks exactly the color of cardboard boxes. It's not really golden, it's not really brown, it's kind of flat. It's very uninteresting color of brown. But anyways, that small stub from the 78G took 12 seconds to dry. The fairly broad and wet X450 took 20. But I mean, look, even through this absolutely wettest part, you can clearly make out the lines from this lined paper. I mean, yes, there's shading, but it's not what I would call flattering shading, because it really just brings out the thinness of the ink. It draws the eye to how undersaturated it is, if you ask me. That's not a good thing. But yeah, there's no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen. So it's well behaved in that regard. And then, as the chromatography probably alluded to, it's really not water resistant. It'll dye the page and make a mess. And actually, God, once again, the camera's really darkening that up. That's barely there in person. You can see these 4 dots, but that's about it. Okay, so next up is Fabriano paper. It's 85 grams per square meter. It's not a steamroller smooth as Clairefontaine. It's not ceramic coated the way Rhodia is. It tends to be able to handle inks that even those two papers have trouble with. And lately it's my favorite to write on. And here, I mean, if I had to pick a favorite, I do think it looks best here. But even here, it looks undersaturated. I mean, like, even here you can see the dots from this dot pad. And yes, there's a lot of shading. There's a big contrast. But it looks undersaturated. It looks watery, and it's still the color of like old cheap cardboard boxes. It's not golden, it's not brown, it's just this weird mushy thing in between. Now you do get a slight halo effect, which I personally enjoy, which is that dark outline around the wettest parts. Now the small stub in the 78G took 13 seconds. The Broad and Wet JinHao took 23. So yeah, and at this point I was noticing that the flow was actually getting wetter as I was writing. Initially I thought maybe it was a 5 out of 10, which is just fine. But here it starts to flow a bit wetter, which was odd. But anyways, yeah, there's no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen on here. But I wouldn't expect it from such a light ink on such dense paper. And yeah, once again, the camera's really showing what my naked eye can't. There is almost nothing there. There's like a very vague haze that dyed the page. And you can see these dots and these little end of the line at the bottom, but that's totally gone. So yeah. I mean, Diamine isn't known for its water-resistant inks, and actually inks that aren't water-resistant tend to be very easy to clean out of pens, and this was probably one of the easiest inks to clean out of a pen, but that's probably because it's mostly water anyway. Like I said, I'm not subtle. Now next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Admittedly, it doesn't look bad on here. If you're into this, it kind of reminds me of earwax a little bit, but anyways, here we do get more of that halo effect around the wettest parts, as you can see in the scrubby. But again, even in the wettest parts, you can still make out every single line of this quadrilateral paper, which really just shows you there needs to be more ink in this ink. And if it were up to me, the ink I'd add to this ink would probably have a better color to it. But anyways, that small stub took 10 seconds to dry. The Broad and Wet JinHao took 18. Which isn't bad, and here it was definitely getting wetter flowing. Now I'd say it's about a 6 out of 10. And that's where I'd say it was by the end. It sort of stuck to a 6 out of 10. And it was in both pens, which before this test it had two very different inks in them, so I don't know what was going on. But yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen. Again, it's a very light ink, and this is still fairly dense paper. Jeez, and once again, the camera's darkening this up a bit. I mean, there's absolutely nothing. You see the vague little bits of these dots and those lines, but yeah, I mean, it's so... Good news is, it is really easy to clean out of your pen. Yep. But anyways, this is a Tomoe River paper, which is known for drawing out shading and sheen and dry times, and it kind of did. Here, that Broad and Wet JinHao took 29 seconds to dry, and I usually stop counting at 30, and that small stub took 16. Again, we get this very distinct halo effect, which generally I like. But here I feel like, again, it just highlights how thin this ink is. It's so watery. It's cardboard box colored. I didn't like it. But, yeah, even on here, there's no echo because it's just too light. Except maybe where I was laying it on really thick to try and see if I could at least get some sheen out of this. Which, by the way, you can't. There's no bleed, no feather, no spread, but yeah, again, the camera's darkening this up a bit. You can see something down here, and you can see these vague little hints of dots and tick marks, but everything else is utterly gone. Now for the next 3 tests, I just used this small stub from the 78G, except to write the name. And here we have the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. And we get some pretty significant spread. I mean, if we look at the line width here versus here, it absolutely exploded. And here, we don't get any shading. All shading is gone. And it's woolly. It's kind of gross looking. 2.5 seconds to dry. You get, like, this weird kind of, like, I don't know, it's like extreme woolliness that carries over into feathering. It's not pleasant. And this color is not golden. It's not brown. I don't even think I'd call it tan, necessarily. It's just kind of icky colored. But yeah, there's bleed. And for a stub that small, and it's a pretty moderate stub, and this is really watery ink, you know, I would expect better. And it very, very nearly rendered onto the page below in several places, which is not what you want to see. It's not good. But yeah, more absorbent papers tend to draw the ink in, make it harder to wash out. And I mean, that's kind of what happened here. Like, yes, there's some noticeable brownish stuff going on, but I can't read that, and I wrote it. Feathered and exploded, it's bad. Next up is Mead Notebook Paper. It's thinner than 20-pound copier paper. It's pretty common for students in the United States. It took 2 seconds to dry. Once again, there's no shading. It's still like cardboard box colored. There's not as much spread, but there is a little, and lately this paper has been feathering, even though it generally does better on that front compared to the 20-pound paper. But here it's not so bad. It's not nearly as bad as the 20-pound. Like there, the H, like a little bit there, a little bit there. But you know, not so bad. And the bleed wasn't nearly as bad. Just a few weird spots where it almost came through there. I was trying to see if I could get some shading. But for the most part, yeah, no, really not bad. If for some reason you have to use this ink and you have to use this paper and you have to write on both sides, I guess it could be a lot worse. But the paper does tend to freak out when you add water, and it kind of did. Yeah, it feathered and exploded. I can't read that. Most of it's gone. I would not wish that. The job of recovering that on anybody. Lastly is Moleskine, which I hate because it hates ink, and I'm going to fly through this one because it's just embarrassing. Look at this woolliness. It's just terrible. And 7 seconds to dry, which I can't explain because obviously it's absorbing the ink, because how else could it look this bad and feather this much? I mean, it's gross, and it's watery. Look, even here, you can see all the lines in this quad paper. Then you get near bleed in several spots, which doesn't make sense because, again, this is such a small, moderate... I hate this paper. Anyways, again, it hates water, it hates ink, add them together, and you get this disaster. Like, that's totally gone. Part of that's there, but that's gone. And this is just I hate that stuff. Anyways, what's that? No, it's chromatography. Alright, so there you go for your consideration from the Triple N Network. Diamine Golden Brown. Can you tell I didn't like it? Yeah, it's not really gold, it's not really brown. It has a wide breadth of shading, but I feel like that's just because it's so watery. Good news is it washes out of pens really easily, which I was happy about because I wanted this out of my pens as quickly as possible. Sorry, I try and be obvious about my biases just so, you know, you can keep that in mind. You know, I want to be honest about it. I didn't like this ink at all. It was undersaturated. It had a lot of problems on the cheap paper. It had a weird flow thing. It's an unpleasant color. Yeah. Anyways, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.